Welcome, restless souls, to Carmen's Crypt. I'm Carmen Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close, the candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carmen's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carmen's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. Sometimes the most terrifying moments happen not in the dark corners of abandoned buildings or ancient graveyards, but in the supposed safety of our own homes. Today's story comes from a listener who learned that the barriers we trust to keep danger out can become the very portals that let it in. This is the tale of a mother, a child, and a dog door that became something far more sinister than intended. Carla had always been afraid of the dark. It wasn't something she liked to admit, especially as a grown woman with a toddler to protect. But there it was, a fear that had followed her from childhood like a persistent shadow. The incident that started it all had been simple enough. A neighbor boy peering through her bedroom window when she was 8 years old. Nothing violent happened, nothing overtly threatening, but the violation of that safe space, the knowledge that someone could be watching from the darkness outside, had planted a seed of unease that never quite left her. So when she and her then husband Brendan bought the century-old Victorian on Elm Street, Carla had to constantly reassure herself about every creak, every groan, every mysterious thump in the night. The house was beautiful, all original hardwood floors, intricate crown molding, and tall windows that let in streams of golden afternoon light. But it was also old, with all the quirks and sounds that came with a structure that had weathered 100 years of seasons. It's just the house settling, she would whisper to herself when the floorboards above their bedroom would creak at 2 a.m., even though no one was upstairs. It's just the old-growth oak scraping the roof, she'd mutter when sharp scratching sounds would drag across the shingles during windstorms. It's just the radiant heating, she'd insist when the pipes would clank and bang like someone was trapped inside the walls, desperately trying to get out. The backyard gate was another source of constant anxiety. No matter how many times Brendan fixed the latch, adjusted the hinges, or added new hardware, the thing simply would not stay closed. Carla would lie awake listening to it clank and bang, and even the slightest breeze, metal on metal, creating an irregular rhythm that sounded almost like Morse code, as if someone was trying to send her a message she couldn't understand. Their dog, Ranger, was a 60-pound golden retriever mix with a perpetually optimistic disposition and an unfortunate tendency to bolt whenever the opportunity presented itself. The previous owners had installed a large dog door in the back entrance to accommodate their German Shepherd, and Brendan had never gotten around to replacing it with something more appropriately sized. It was, Carla often thought, ridiculously oversized for their needs. Large enough for a person to crawl through if they were determined enough. But Ranger loved his freedom, and 3-year-old Danny loved watching the dog come and go, so the door stayed. Carla pushed down her unease about the security implications. After all, they lived in a good neighborhood, with decent people and well-maintained yards. What could go wrong? The divorce was as amicable as these things could be. Brendan wasn't a bad man. They had simply grown into different people who wanted different things. He took an apartment across town, and in the custody arrangement, he also took Ranger. Carla had insisted on it, actually, Single parenting was challenging enough without adding a large, energetic dog to the equation, and besides, Ranger had always been more Brendan's dog anyway. The house felt different without them both. Larger, emptier. The creaks and groans that had once seemed like normal settling now echoed through rooms that felt too spacious for just two people. Danny, bless his resilient little heart, adapted quickly to the new normal. He missed his father and the dog, but at 3 years old, his world was still small enough that Mommy's presence could fill most of the void. Carla, however, found herself lying awake more often, listening to the sounds she couldn't identify. Was that the gate again? Was it just the wind? She'd always been a type B personality, disorganized, spontaneous, willing to let small problems slide until they became bigger ones. The phone charger that was never where she left it, the mail that piled up on the kitchen counter, the dog door that she kept meaning to board up or replace, but somehow never got around to. It was a Thursday evening in late September when everything changed, and by the time Carla got Danny fed and settled on the living room couch for his nightly movie, currently an endless rotation of Disney films that she could practically recite from memory, dusk was already painting the windows purple. They were 20 minutes into Finding Nemo when her phone died. The little white Apple logo appeared, flickered, and then went black. Carla sighed, pausing the movie. "Mommy's phone is broken, buddy. I need to go charge it in the kitchen. You keep watching, okay?" Danny nodded absently, thumb in his mouth, eyes glued to the colorful fish on the screen. Carla padded to the kitchen in her socked feet, scanning the counter for the white charging cord that seemed to migrate around the house of its own accord. She found it lying near the coffee maker and crossed to the outlet by the window to plug it in. That's when the feeling hit her. It started as a prickle at the base of her neck, like tiny ice crystals forming on her skin. Then came the goosebumps, raising the fine hairs on her arms until they stood at attention. Her stomach dropped as if she'd missed a step on a staircase, and a cold weight settled in her chest. The unmistakable sensation that something was very, very wrong. Carla's hands trembled as she plugged in the cord, her body responding to a threat her mind hadn't yet identified. She looked up from the outlet, following her instincts, and peered through the kitchen window into the backyard. The gate was open again. That wasn't unusual. But there, in the center of the small patch of grass, someone was sitting cross-legged like a child at story time. They wore a dark hoodie, pulled up despite the mild evening, and dark sunglasses despite the fading light. They were facing the house, facing her, and they were completely, unnaturally still. Carla's rational mind tried to process what she was seeing. Maybe it was a teenager playing a prank. Maybe it was someone who was lost or confused. Maybe it was just a homeless person who had wandered into the wrong yard and would leave when they realized someone lived here. But the longer she watched, the more wrong it felt. The figure didn't shift or fidget the way people do when they're sitting on the ground. They didn't look around or check their phone or show any signs of normal human restlessness. They just sat, still as a mannequin, staring directly at the kitchen window where Carla stood. Carla stepped closer to the window, thinking maybe the person hadn't seen her yet. Maybe making her presence known would encourage them to leave. But as she moved into clearer view, the hooded figure remained motionless. If anything, the stillness seemed more pointed now, more deliberate, as if they were making sure she knew they saw her seeing them. Her hands shaking, Carla backed away from the window and grabbed her dead phone, jabbing at the power button uselessly. She needed to call the police. She needed to call someone, but the phone remained stubbornly black. Moving as quietly as she could, Carla crept to the back door and turned the deadbolt. The metallic click seemed abnormally loud in the quiet house. She tested the handle to make sure it was secure, then remembered with a sinking heart that a locked door meant nothing when there was a dog-sized hole cut into it at ground level. The dog door. The stupid, oversized dog door that she'd been meaning to fix for months. Carla grabbed her phone and charger and hurried to the dining room where her laptop sat open on the table. Her fingers fumbled over the keys as she opened Facebook Messenger, scrolling frantically through her contacts for anyone who might be online. Her sister in California. It would be early evening there. Perfect. Lisa, she typed, not caring about caps lock. Someone is sitting in my backyard staring at my house. My phone is dead. If you don't hear from me in 5 minutes, call the police. 1247 Elm Street. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Then Lisa's response. OMG, calling cops now. Are you safe? Can you see them? Door locked but big dog door. Carla typed back. Going to check if still there. From the living room, Danny called out. Mommy, where are you? Coming, baby. Carla called back, trying to keep her voice normal. She looked at her phone. Still dead. She had plugged it in, but it would take a few minutes to get enough charge to turn on. She needed to know if the person was still there. Maybe they'd gotten bored and left. Maybe this was all just a bizarre misunderstanding that would make a funny story later. Carla dropped to her hands and knees and crawled toward the kitchen, staying below the window line. The tile was cold against her palms, and she felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad horror movie. But the feeling of wrongness hadn't left her. If anything, it was getting stronger. She reached the kitchen and slowly raised her head to peek over the windowsill. The hooded figure was gone from the center of the yard. Carla felt a moment of relief. Maybe they had finally left. But as her eyes adjusted to the deepening twilight, she realized with a cold shock that they hadn't left at all. They had moved closer, much closer. They were now sitting directly outside the back door, less than 3 feet from where Carla crouched. The dark sunglasses were pointed straight at the window, as if they had known exactly where she would look, as if they had been waiting for her. Carla and the watcher stared at each other through the glass. The person made no move to leave. No gesture of acknowledgement, no sign that they understood they were trespassing. They simply sat and watched, their face an unreadable mask behind the dark lenses. And then, slowly and deliberately, they raised one hand and pointed at the dog door. Carla scrambled backward from the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. She fumbled for her phone, nearly crying with relief when the screen flickered to life with just enough battery to make a call. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone in my backyard, Carla whispered, trying to keep her voice low so Danny wouldn't hear. They're just sitting there staring at my house and they won't leave. Ma'am, I need you to speak up. Are you in immediate danger? Carla pressed the phone closer to her mouth. Someone is trespassing in my backyard. I'm alone with my 3-year-old son. They've been there for several minutes and they're not responding when they can clearly see me. Okay, ma'am. I'm dispatching officers to your location. Can you give me your address? Carla rattled off the address, her voice getting steadier as she talked to the calm professional dispatcher. Are your doors locked? Yes, but... Carla hesitated. How do you explain to a 911 operator that your locked door has a large hole in it? There's a dog door. It's big. Someone could crawl through it if they wanted to. I understand. Officers are about 5 minutes out. I'm going to stay on the line with you. Can you see the person now? I need to check. Okay, but be very careful. Don't put yourself in danger. Carla crawled back toward the window, phone pressed to her ear. She could hear the dispatcher breathing, a comforting reminder that she wasn't alone in this. Slowly, she raised her head to look outside. The figure was still there, still in the same position by the door. But now they seemed to be looking right at her, as if they had been tracking her movement through the house. The dark sunglasses reflected the kitchen light, making it impossible to see their eyes. But Carla had the disturbing sense that they were amused by her fear. They're still there. She whispered into the phone. "Officers will be there soon. I want you to stay away from windows and doors. Is there a room in the house where you can lock yourself and your son in?" Carla thought about it. The upstairs bathroom had a lock, but she'd have to carry Danny up a flight of stairs that creaked loudly enough to wake the dead. If someone did come through the dog door, they'd hear exactly where she was going. "Mommy!" Danny called from the living room, his voice carrying that particular tone that meant he was getting worried. "Where are you? I can't see Nemo." "I'll be right back, honey," Carla called out, trying to sound normal. "Mommy's just talking to someone." She was about to tell the dispatcher about the bathroom when she heard it, a sound that made her blood freeze in her veins. The slow, deliberate squeak of the dog door's hinges. The dog door made a very specific sound when something passed through it. Carla had heard it thousands of times. The soft brush of fur against plastic, the quick squeak thump as the flap swung both ways. Ranger had his own rhythm when he used it, a confident push-through that made the door swing wildly before settling back into place. This was different. This was slow, deliberate, as if someone was testing it, seeing how much noise it would make, how much space they had to work with. Squeak, pause, squeak, pause. Ma'am, are you there?" The dispatcher's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Someone's coming through the dog door," Carla whispered, the words barely audible even to herself. "What? Can you repeat that?" "They're coming inside," Carla said more loudly, panic finally overtaking her need for stealth. "Someone is crawling through the dog door." "Ma'am, I need you to grab your son and get to a secure room immediately. Officers are 2 minutes away." Carla dropped the phone and ran to the living room, where Danny was sitting exactly where she'd left him, still watching fish swim across the television screen, thumb in his mouth, completely oblivious to the nightmare unfolding just one room away. "Danny, baby, we need to go upstairs right now," Carla said, scooping him into her arms. "But Nemo!" "We'll finish it later. Right now we need to go." She could hear the dog door moving more frequently now, accompanied by other sounds, soft scraping noises, like fabric against the door frame, like someone working very hard to squeeze through an opening that wasn't quite big enough. Carla headed for the stairs, Danny's warm weight in her arms, when she heard something that stopped her cold. Laughter. Soft, breathy laughter coming from the kitchen. Someone was enjoying this. Every maternal instinct Carla possessed screamed at her to run. Not upstairs where they could be trapped, not to a bathroom where they could be cornered, but out of the house entirely, away from the dog door and the laughter and the person who thought terrorizing a mother and child was amusing. "Mommy, what's happening?" "We're going to visit the neighbors," Carla said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Just for a little while." She fumbled with the front door lock, her hand shaking so badly she could barely turn the deadbolt. Behind them, she could hear more sounds from the kitchen. Footsteps now, soft but unmistakable on the tile floor. Someone was definitely inside her house. The lock finally turned. Carla yanked the door open and ran across the front yard, leaving the door wide open behind her. Let the intruder have the house. Let them take whatever they wanted. Her only priority was getting Danny somewhere safe. The Hendersons across the street were having a dinner party. Carla could see warm light spilling from their windows, could hear the soft murmur of conversation and clinking glassware. Normal people having a normal evening, completely unaware of the horror unfolding 50 feet away. Carla pounded on their front door, Danny now crying from the sudden chaos and his mother's obvious fear. "Help! Please help!" She could hear the neighbor's dog barking on the other side of the door, and then the door opened to reveal Mrs. Henderson, a kind woman in her 60s who often waved from her garden. Her face immediately shifted from confusion to concern when she saw Carla's tears and Danny's frightened sobs. "Carla, my goodness, what's wrong?" "Someone broke into my house," Carla gasped. "They came through the dog door. I called 911, but come in immediately," Mrs. Henderson said, pulling them inside and quickly locking the door behind them. "Harold," she called to her husband, "cancel the dinner party. Carla needs our help." The next few minutes were a blur of kindness. The dinner guests quietly gathered their things and left through the back door, giving Carla and Danny space. Mrs. Henderson wrapped Danny in a soft throw blanket and turned on cartoons to distract him, while Mr. Henderson stood at the front window, keeping watch on Carla's house. "I can see the police cars coming," he announced. 2 of them, lights flashing. Carla felt some of the tension leave her shoulders, but she couldn't stop thinking about their cat, Whiskers, who had been sleeping somewhere in the house when she fled. The poor thing was probably hiding under a bed, terrified by the intrusion. Through the window, they watched as police officers approached her house with flashlights, moving carefully around the perimeter. Carla found herself holding her breath, wondering what they would find inside. 20 minutes later, one of the officers knocked on the Hendersons' door. Carla answered it with Danny on her hip, the little boy now calm but clingy. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Officer Cooper. We apprehended someone on your property." "Is it safe to go home?" "Yes, ma'am, but I need to ask you some questions first. Can you describe what happened?" Carla recounted the entire incident while Danny dozed against her shoulder. The sitting figure in the yard, the pointing at the dog door, the sounds of someone crawling through it, the laughter. Officer Cooper took notes, his expression growing more serious as he spoke. "When we arrived, we found a woman sitting on your back porch. She was reaching through the dog door repeatedly like she was testing it. When we approached her, she didn't try to run. She just kept laughing and reaching through the door." Is she mentally ill?" "We're not sure yet. She won't speak to us except to laugh. But Mrs. Morrison, there's something else you should know." Carla's stomach tightened. "What?" "We found evidence that she's been on your property before, multiple times. There are cigarette butts behind your garden shed, and we found what looks like a makeshift seat, some boards arranged like a chair, hidden in the bushes by your back fence. It appears she's been watching your house for a while." The news hit Carla like ice water. All those nights she had heard sounds and dismissed them as normal house settling. The gate that never stayed latched. The feeling of being watched that she had attributed to new home anxiety. It hadn't been her imagination after all. "How long?" she whispered. "Hard to say. Could be weeks, could be months. We're going to need to process the scene and see what else we can find. Do you have somewhere you and your son can stay tonight?" Carla looked at Mrs. Henderson, who immediately nodded. "Of course, they can stay here. I'll need to go back and get some things for Danny, and our cat." "We'll escort you. But, Mrs. Morrison, I'd strongly recommend installing security cameras and doing something permanent about that dog door. What happened tonight? This person was planning something. We just don't know what yet." Carla never slept well in the house on Elm Street again, even after boarding up the dog door with heavy plywood, even after installing motion sensor lights and a security system, even after the police assured her that the woman, whose name she learned was Rebecca Marsh, had been charged with criminal trespass and was receiving mental health treatment. Carla couldn't shake the feeling of violation. Every night sound made her heart race. Every time the old house settled or heating pipes clanged, she found herself wondering if it was really just the house, or if someone else had found a way in. The knowledge that Rebecca had been watching them for months, learning their routines, planning something that was interrupted only by chance, made every shadow seem threatening. Danny, resilient as only children can be, bounced back quickly. He remembered the incident as the night we had a sleepover at Mrs. Henderson's house, and showed no lasting effects from the trauma. But Carla knew she couldn't continue living in a state of constant vigilance and fear. 3 months later, they moved to a brand new townhouse in a gated community. No dog door, no old-growth trees scraping the roof, no mysterious sounds that could be dismissed as house settling. Carla thought she would feel safer there, and she did. But she also learned something that night that she carried with her to the new house and beyond. The things we install to make our lives more convenient, pet doors, smart locks, automated systems, can become vulnerabilities if we're not careful. Home security isn't just about alarm systems and deadbolts. It's about thinking like someone who wants to get in and closing every possible avenue they might use. Most importantly, she learned to trust her instincts. All those months of dismissing strange sounds and unexplained incidents as normal home ownership had nearly led to disaster. Sometimes the things that go bump in the night really are just old houses settling, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes the most frightening realization is that the call was coming from inside the house all along, or rather, that someone had found a way to make sure it could. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carmen's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media, or on my website, carmen-carrion.com. Who knows? Your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carmen's crypt, every fear comes to life, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.